the only option it's giving me. It's not.
Okay, well, either or is cool with me.
Good evening, everyone. Corey Minor Smith with Corey Empowers, and we are here for Mental Wealth Wednesday. This is the fourth Wednesday of February, Black History Month. And I've heard a lot of people talk about Black History Month and criticize February being the selected month for Black History Month. But I encourage people to know and research further if they don't know that Dr. Carter G. Woodson, a historian, founded Negro History Week in 1926. And 50 years later, it was expanded to a full month by President Gerald Ford. Now, why February? It's not because it's the shortest month of the year. It is because it coincides with the birthdays of Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, as well as Frederick Douglass, the well-known abolitionist. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson first started with Negro History Week, the week that encompasses President Lincoln's birthday as well as Frederick Douglass's birthday. And then now we celebrate 100 years later, Black History Month in February. And if you're like me, it is 365. Hashtag 365 Black History Month, because Black history is world history. Black history is American history, and Black history happens every day. And I just wanted to shout that out, acknowledge it, because it is very important, especially now in this country. But we have with us tonight Mr. Charles Webb from Houston, Texas. Hi, Mr. Webb.
Hello. Good to be here.
You're rocking your sports jacket today. Who is that?
Texas Southern.
All
One
right.
of the greatest HBCUs in the nation. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining the Mental Wealth Wednesday family tonight. As you know, I do this once a month and talk about mental health, different aspects of mental health and wellness and resources, more importantly. So I truly appreciate you coming on to share your experience as a police officer with the Houston Police Department for 31 years. You don't look old enough to have that behind you.
Hey, what they say, don't let the smooth taste fool you. But yeah, I put some work in and loved every year as I got closer to retiring and being a part of this retirement world. So I got glad I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to this other half of my life.
Okay, well, good stuff. Well, Appreciate you. Thank you for your service. And I really, really, really appreciate your time in the community. You were a community resource officer to some capacity and also working with CIT. I'm going to take a minute. I don't know if everybody knows what CIT stands for. If you know what CIT stands for, before we get into it, put it in the comments. I would love to know what you think CIT stands for. Give a brief pause. But go ahead. CIT, what is that and how were you involved?
The Crisis Intervention Team. And when Houston first brought this program to the department, I was one of the original officers that decided to actually join the program on my own because I liked what the program did and what it offered for the mentally ill. We call them consumers nowadays, and the ability that we had to get them assistance all across the board. And it was just a good thing for the department because our department, of course, like a lot of other major cities and even smaller cities, dealt with the homeless population. And outside of dealing with the mentally ill and mentally challenged on the homeless side of it, we still had to deal with it on a lot of the family situations when we went to calls and had to go there for disturbances and things of that nature.
How were you alerted to a call that may have involved a mental health crisis?
Well, our dispatchers, once they the call takers get the call and they get all the information, then they listen to what the caller is saying, and from their training, they know that this might be considered a CIT call, and from the information that they got, then they will, of course, ask for and send that call to primarily a CIT unit. And if one's not available, then of course an officer has to go to that call, but preferably one of the crisis intervention team, CIT officers, were the ones that they would try to get that call to first.
Wow, that's a very important job that the dispatchers have to be able to discern a call, because sometimes you don't know, and maybe it's a neighbor or a family member or the person who's in a mental health crisis.
I would challenge anybody to. I mean, everybody knows what we do as police officers. Okay, we go out there, we protect and serve, chase down the bad guys. So say, help, solve crimes and help people resolve situations. But what we call down here in Houston, our HEC center, I would challenge anyone that hasn't been to their local HEC center in their own city to, if you can, go down there and go through one of the programs that they have where you can go down as a citizen and just sit there and view. I would rather be a police officer
Mm.
than work as a dispatcher, because the stress that they have to deal with taking in calls and listening to the actual call, and the stress that goes down with that call before it comes to us, that's a job in itself right there. Because when we get the call, we get the notes that they've typed
Mhm.
in and
Mhm.
they just relay it to us, and we go to that location with that information. But they have to literally talk to the person calling and deal with the stress and all the other information that's coming in from that call to get it to us. And that is definitely a job in itself.
Wow. Yeah, that's very important. I guess they have a profound way to be able to filter the information so that you have the essential details and know what to expect and go into a call, or how you may have to address a particular call.
Yeah, because we definitely have to make sure safety is first and foremost. But outside of that, getting as much information from the person that's calling for the call taker to put in the report, I mean in the call slip, so we can make sure that we have that information when going to the call.
So with CIT, what does that entail? What kind of training, or how long are you committed? Can you leave at any time or refuse to take a call at any time?
One thing that our department did was initially when we started the program, they actually volunteered to join it. And since then, of course, it's been some time now since then. Since then, all officers are required to have that 40-hour CIT training course
Okay.
to be a police officer. So you have to have that now for all officers. But back then, we had to take the 40-hour mandatory course initially, and each year you had to take an 8-hour refresher course just to make sure that you're up to date on any laws that might have changed, just to make sure you're up to date on CIT issues and things of that nature. So we had to do that every year while you were a part of the program. And even to this day now, officers still have to take that 8-hour course once they've completed a 40-hour course after they finish the academy.
I truly appreciate that. And again, appreciate your service and your commitment to be a part of CIT when it wasn't mandatory.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do it. So I truly appreciate you doing that. How do you, or did you talk to other officers about this program? Like before it became mandatory, did you encourage others to be involved, or did they want to be involved because they saw you being involved and how tremendous of an asset it is to the department and the community?
Well, the department is like any other department. When there's extra and more work to be done, some officers don't want that extra work.
Hmm.
They want to go and do that. We say 9 to 5, but we do their shift and get it over with and get it done with. But having the ability to go out and have to deal with the regular calls, and now you have these calls also. Some didn't want to be a part of that. Some thought it was just another little crappy ass title to have, because that wasn't what they signed on for. And some, like I said, like myself, wanted to do it.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I wouldn't say I knew a percentage of those that did, but if I had to guess, I would probably say about 2 out of 10 wanted to do it, and the others didn't. But those that did, we all fell in love with that title, and even though it's work, and we had to deal with some dangerous situations, because when you're dealing with the mentally ill and the mentally challenged, it's tough. I mean, because you want to be considerate and passionate of what they're going through, but by the same token, you have to understand that, hey, I still have to make sure I'm safe, make sure they're safe, and make sure everyone else around them is safe too. But by the same token, you have to realize, let's get this situation resolved as soon as possible without anybody getting hurt.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I know a person who shared this information for this call today had mentioned about crisis response, not just being about de-escalation, but also including training, as you mentioned, the mandatory training now, and empathy and long-term community impact. And I think with that is the compassion that you mentioned. Like, you have to have some level of compassion in this work, while also being able to protect, those who are involved in the situation at the scene, or those who might be approaching the scene.
Mm-hmm.
But with all of that, I think about Sonia Massey, and I just want to extend sincere condolences to her family, to her friends, and that there is now a group that is overseeing different matters regarding the police and mental health calls in that area where she was murdered by an officer.
Oh, yes.
Sonia Massey, unfortunately, is a very sad story, because it seems like her mother and family did what people are encouraged to do, what I as an advocate would encourage people to do, which is to reach out to law enforcement, try to develop a relationship, letting them know that there is a mental health challenge involved, and trying to just give the information, I guess, like a dispatch person would do, so that everybody is safe. And this was done, from what I've read, prior to Sonia ultimately dying at the hands of an officer.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I know that it's dangerous, and I know that, it can be dangerous, I should say, especially when the person is untreated. But as an officer, it seems like your roles are questioned a lot, in terms of how do you know when a situation is dangerous?
Mm-hmm.
From just some words that are expressed by a woman who's much smaller than you, versus a person actually having a weapon, in hand, or something that's perceived to be a weapon in hand.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right there on the scene, making a distinction, making a decision right at that time. Can you walk us through that a little bit, or just give an example of something that you experienced in your 31-year career in having to make that quick on-the-spot decision in how to proceed with a situation that required de-escalation?
Yes. Well, of course, it's easy when you get a call or you're on the scene and weapons are there. You got it in the call, so it says possible weapons might be there. That alerts you to it. But when you're there, and let's say, that old saying, you go from 0 to 100 real quick. When you're there, and there are some situations where it happens just that quick, and you cannot do anything but react from that.
Mm-hmm.
But along the way, from that 0 to 100, if you're going, 20, 30, 40, 60, 80 up to that area, and you're going through the situation, you're training and good common sense,
Mm-hmm.
good common sense of how the situation is going alerts you to be more aware and more cautious of what might, or what can happen, just in someone's voice, or someone's fidgety actions, or someone's constant repeated eyes looking around, and just not standing still and listen to you and paying attention to you. That alerts you to be more aware of the possibility of something else could happen. And that's just in general. It just heightens it more when you're at those kind of situations, and you're dealing with someone with a mentally ill situation. Because there have been times where I went to a call, and the devil told me to kill you. The devil told me don't talk to you. And we have to, how are we going to react to that? And how are we going to get around that? And of course, we know with the training that we've had in those situations, you try to, revert them to stop thinking about that they're hearing in their head, and focus on something else. And they're all not done quick and fast and in a hurry. Some takes time, and you definitely have to have patience, and in some situations, I've seen officers, we've watched a lot of videos, and I've seen a lot of body cam footage of officers that didn't have patience. And it led to them making decisions that ultimately cost them their job, cost them, their freedom, and cost someone else their life. And it's sad that happened, because we go through training, and we go through so many situations where we have roles, people playing their roles in it, but it's a whole different situation when it's reality. some departments and some cities have rubber bullets. They use those, but when you get to the reality of it, it's no more rubber bullets. It's real bullets. It's real knives. It's not. It's real weapons that can harm you, that can harm someone else. So we have to treat those situations, seriously, and to make sure that we are doing our best to protect ourselves and the community, and even the person themselves, from themselves. But there are situations, if you have the right training and you have the patience, because I've seen some, like I said, some situations where I was like, they shouldn't have done that, but people are different. Officers are different, and I have patience, a lot of patience, but some officers don't. And when they make those fatal decisions, it ultimately comes back to bite them.
Wow. There are just so many situations. I'm even thinking of Elijah McClain. That's the young man in Colorado who was murdered as well. But sometimes people, even if it's not a mental health issue, just their ability to communicate. And in his case, I think he was on the spectrum and communicated the best that he could. He had on a mask, but it's because, I think he's anemic or something. There was just a lot of different factors in play, and him being able to communicate as best as he could to the officers. And unfortunately, even I think it was even before the officers got there, just the first responders, the medics. But unfortunately, there are a lot of different situations, real life situations, where people have died, and it doesn't seem like they should have, that there should have been some other efforts, taken to address whatever the concerns were, whether a person was doing something alarming or not. And in Elijah's case, I don't think it was anything alarming that triggered ultimately his death. But with all of that, I don't want to hound you on all these different issues that have happened throughout our country. But with all of that, what is one thing that you wish that every person, or at least every first responder, not just limiting it to law enforcement, but first responders, period. What is one thing that you wish that they knew or cared about in dealing with a mental health crisis call?
The main thing I would definitely say is definitely you have to be concerned about that person in general, outside of doing your job, and have other things on your mind, because we have to make sure that we're focused on that situation at that time. And on top of making sure that person is safe, and ourselves and the community, the one thing that I've stressed on, like I said a few minutes ago, is patience. No matter when you get up there, we don't rush into, come over here and get over here and do what I say. And you can't do that. You have to assess the situation, and you definitely have to have patience first and foremost, outside of dealing with the safety issues and trying to resolve the situation. So if I could relay that information to any officers in any department, that's the main thing that I would say, because you see a lot of movies and you see a lot of other footage of officers going to a call, and next thing you know, you hear gunshots. Next thing you know, someone's on the ground with an injury or a knife wound or something like that. Now, true enough, every situation is different, and some situations happen just like that. But there are situations that I've seen where officer discharged his weapon, and I didn't think he had to. I just didn't feel like he had to, with the training that I've had and with the patience and the experience that I've had as an officer. I would not have discharged my weapon in that situation. But that's just a whole nother, can of worms that's open, that they have to deal with, that, their department and the training level that they had. And then all of that comes into the light when it gets down to the legal battle of it too.
My goodness. So you learned about CIT before it was mandatory. What led you to know that this was something to do, something that was important for the community?
Well, outside of, the police officer title as being your job, it's just the fact that the area that I worked in, which was highly populated by homeless, and I've seen quite a few of them. So being out there in that area, and like a lot of cities, they have the bus station, and that's the area where I worked at, and that's highly populated by a lot of homeless people. And just to see them in general, all ages, races, sizes, colors, and just to kick back, to sit back and just think about their lives and what they've been through. Now, there are some that were homeless that wanted to be out there. There are some that are mentally challenged that don't want to take their medicine, So we have, those kind of situations. But for those that want to get help, that want to join the programs, it allowed me and the other officers to give them an opportunity to go out and get them help so that they can get housing, so that they can take their medicine, so that they can get off the streets and not put themselves in the situations that they're in at the time.
What kind of resources did you share, or did you know about, or direct families, or even those that are out in the streets? What kind of resources did you share with them, or how did you redirect them to resources?
We here at Houston had we had a homeless court program to where if a homeless person or a mentally ill person received a citation, of course, so they would have to go to court. And when they would have to go to court, that would put them in a position to where the mental health unit would provide those services for them, be it housing, be it giving them the opportunity to get their IDs, or going to the hospital, to the doctor to get the medication that they need. So the programs that the city provided at the time, we had a whole list of them that we were able to provide for them. And if it had to deal with the mentally ill per se in a nutshell, then once we would take them down to our NPC, our neuropsychiatric center, that's where most of the other resources that were available and the help that was available to them was at, so they can make sure if it was a family member, if they had one, or if they didn't have one, other programs that was available for them to get the help that they needed at that time that they had that breakdown.
So you were able to witness, observe people who lived on the street voluntarily or otherwise. What do you say to the families who may not know that their loved one is out on the street, or know that their family member is somewhere untreated, and they just don't know what to do? Do they call the police department and develop some kind of relationship with the police department in case, the police encounters their loved one? How can a family member or a loved one, a supporter, a caregiver, work with law enforcement and other community organizations to help their loved one?
Well, most of the time, family members and loved ones, they know that person's situation already. A lot of times when they've tried to get them help, and there are times when that help, broke down, and they ended up, back on the streets. But with the programs that were available, we as officers and as members of the CIT unit, we would definitely get them all the numbers and the programs and the information that they needed to get assistance for that person. But that person would be the main one that didn't want to be a part of that program.
Yeah.
I had a guy, been knowing him for years, spoke to him, gave him money from time to time. I still saw him. He was mentally ill, but he was controllable. So had to take him down. He had an episode. Had to take him down to the NPC unit. Ran him up. I never ran him up, but I'd always talked to him and seen other officers. So this time, ran him up, took him down. He was missing from Minnesota. Did not know that. His family members thought he was dead. So the sister comes down to Houston, finds out where he is, provides him help, provides him assistance. He's on his medication, takes him back up there. I'm thinking everything is okie dokie. A couple of months later, who's back on that corner? Same guy, Mr. Johnson. Won't forget it. Mr. Johnson is back on that corner. So somewhere down the line, I guess his family wanted to help. They did their part and tried. And I'm thinking the breakdown, because he was probably about in his mid 40s at the time, the breakdown between him living his lifestyle down here and having to go up there and living in that controlled environment and dealing with family and medication, things of that nature, I'm pretty sure they were like, we're not taking this. We're going to take you back to Houston. Give you a bus ticket so you can go back to Houston. And he ended up back in Houston. And funny, I even saw him about a couple of weeks ago when I was just driving through downtown. I just drive through the old neighborhood to check it out. And I rode through there and I see Mr. Johnson over there. I rode by there and gave him a couple of dollars and told him to take care of himself. And he remembered me also too. Yeah, it's just situations like that where we can provide help for them and they can get it. But most of the time, they don't want that help. They like the situation that they're in. But a lot of times, some of the individuals do want it. And those are the ones that, and then the stories that we like to see, and we don't see them back out there again. Or we don't get that call to that location again.
Right.
Yeah.
As you described that scenario, I thought of the movie The Soloist.
Oh, yeah.
Starring Jamie Foxx, and he portrayed Nathaniel Ayers, who lived on Skid Row in Los Angeles. Yes. My son actually did a research project and learned that Nathaniel Ayers was from Cleveland, Ohio, but he went to Juilliard and ultimately lived on Skid Row. And for him and many others, it is like voluntary, like they know, or maybe not, that they're ill, but they know where they're comfortable. For him, the way it was portrayed in the movie, he was not comfortable with living in an apartment. It created a situation of him exhibiting, severe symptoms of his illness, being in that unit. And that movie, while it is a movie, was based on real life, but it helped me to like put things in perspective regarding my loved one, right? Like not trying to make people fit in a box, literally and figuratively, whether it's in the apartment or the way they dress or present themselves in this world. And that can be challenging for some people, loved ones who know that, they could take their family members shopping or, get them food or whatever it is that they need, but the family member chooses otherwise.
Yes.
But in terms of law enforcement and being aware, you patrol the streets and things of that nature, sometimes these images can not look, I guess, normal or cause concern or alarm. How, as a trained officer, did you deal with situations like that, or other officers who had issues with not fully being patient or appreciating differences in the way that people present themselves? How were those things addressed? And
well, as a veteran officer and being comfortable in my decision and the decision that I make, I definitely knew that when other officers were on scene and they saw how I reacted to situations, that it would feed, they would feed off into them, So I also thought that experience would just trickle down, and if they were to be in that situation in the future, that they would think about how I handled it and they would use that. Now, for those officers that reacted totally different, I would definitely say that, it's a experience that they learn from those situations. That me per se, if I was there, I would give them advice and let them know, hey, you should have done this or you should have tried that. But for those that wasn't, and we had conversations about it afterwards, then it would have to go through a situation where it's like, I wasn't there, but I can tell you this, if I was there, or how would you handle this situation in the future if it was to happen again, and give them other options that they could have with that. But being able to deal with the situation itself definitely comes from, like I said, your knowledge and your common sense and the training that you had, but also your empathy and your patience that you would have for that person first and foremost. Definitely.
Absolutely. And just like bias, right? Like we have to address bias.
Yes.
I've often used this descriptor of, in any town USA, you may see a person who is pushing a shopping cart that may appear to be junk to us.
Mm-hmm.
It's their, life possessions and the things that they value.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people can have a misconception or they're biased to think that, okay, this person has a mental health condition and they're dangerous for whatever reason, just because of how they appear, how they present themselves. What have you found to be some of the public's misconception about law enforcement and dealing with the mental health community, people in the community that have mental health challenges?
That we just want to, I guess you could say, tase a consumer, or that we just want to shoot someone, or that we don't have patience, when we do, so, like I said, every situation is different, and some do require those quick reactions, but some don't. But for the public to see us on the call and not know how we are trained, and our ideology and our training has taught us, when you get in a situation where there is a weapon, it's told to us to end the threat, and some officers, take that part of the job title to the extreme, and they end the threat where you don't necessarily, this is my opinion now, you don't necessarily have to end the threat in that manner that causes death. We're not taught to shoot in the leg. We're not taught to shoot in the arm. We're taught to aim for upper mass. And now that when you're dealing with situations where a weapon is involved and you have to make that critical decision, and you have situations where someone is mentally challenged or someone is on drugs. I've seen, when I've not per se myself, but video footage of officers being involved with someone that are in those situations, and center mass didn't stop the person from coming towards the officer. So you had to pretty much go to the next step, headshot. That part would definitely stop them from doing what they're doing. But, going through those situations and being in those situations is like quick reactions. What are you going to do? What's going to happen after that? Because that's the next step of it also too. What happens after that? So us as officers, we have all that going on in our head. You don't want yourself to get hurt. You don't want the other person to get hurt. You don't want anyone outside of this call to get hurt too. So we have to make sure that we're thinking about all of that one time by still doing our job and making sure that we can resolve this situation as easy as possible.
Yeah. Very, very, very important jobs for real. And I, again, just celebrate your service. Thank you for your service and all, law enforcement. I think that law enforcement is critical for mental health issues in the community. But when they're trained, I do specify, being trained and to really address bias with individuals, and hopefully those who decide to be a part of the CIT team, that they are able to address any bias that they may have, and to be fully patient and compassionate and empathetic in these situations, because they can be unpredictable. And I understand, everybody needing to be safe, which is really important.
Here down in Houston, the program has improved so much to where we have a mental health unit, period. That's all they handle across the city is calls that are involved with mental health, no matter what type it is. And one thing that we've also done is we've teamed up with, I forgot which company, which medical facility, but to where they have a clinician that rides with the officer on a daily basis, that for that mental health officer to go to those calls, because we do our part,
Yes.
Also are trained to do their part too to help de-escalate situation. That's one thing that I like about the department is once they implemented that, they have that clinician ride with the officer on a daily basis. That really helped out with bringing down the numbers on dealing with those kind of calls.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I know, there are different programs throughout the country that have a team like that, where there is a mental health professional along with law enforcement that goes to address these different calls. And I think that can help tremendously. What I would love to see even more so, and you tell me your opinion on this,
Okay.
is for the officers to be in plain clothes, like detectives. They are in plain clothes many times, most departments that I've seen, but it for some people with severe mental illness, dealing with hallucinations and delusions, it seems like a common thread. It are delusions about law enforcement, whether it or CIA, the FBI, some branch of government that is doing something to them or watching them or whatever the case may be. So to have an officer in uniform come, it could like trigger the symptoms, the delusions, cause them to have, erratic behavior or whatever because of the thoughts that they're having already before the officers arrived. So it seems like if they could come in plain clothes, it can help to de-escalate something before it even gets escalated. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's like a double-edged sword,
Okay.
and I kind of see where you're coming from, because I have been on calls and have seen to where in uniform it did just that.
Mm-hmm.
They hated the police, and it definitely did trigger that. And by me being in plain clothes, now that kind of puts yourself in a situation to where you're not an officer anymore. You're just a regular civilian, a regular citizen. And if I was going to help someone, would a regular civilian be doing that also outside of me doing that because it's my job?
Mm.
And being in that uniform and making sure that we would definitely have to have the equipment that we would need to de-escalate the situation, whereas using our taser or using our pepper spray to help de-escalate it and not have to use our weapon. And being in plain clothes, we wouldn't have that availability because we would, definitely be in plain clothes. Now, I've seen some departments that have their mental health units not be per se in their police uniform, but they did have on. They were uniform with the khakis. They still had the gun belt on.
Mm-hmm.
The polo shirt. It still said police on it, but it wasn't the actual police uniform attire. And still the same thing. You want to make sure that we have all the equipment that we need because, like I said, first and foremost is our safety. Theirs too. And with the equipment that we have to help de-escalate the situation, we would definitely need that along the way. But outside of that, and knowing that if I was an officer, would I want to go there without my equipment and my gear? I probably wouldn't, because like I said, I'm trained for it. I'm trained to use it, and I want to make sure I have everything available to de-escalate it without having to make it go to a different level.
Thank you for that clarity. So when I say plain clothes, that means there wouldn't be any weapon, no.
No.
Oh, okay.
When
So
you
I don't.
mention and
Okay.
when you mention detectives in plain clothes, those are detectives. They're going there after the fact, to investigate, to ask questions, and to get more information for their follow up.
Yeah.
They're not going there to arrest nobody.
Right.
And if they got some information, it's a cool, calm type of investigation, and they go there and they say, "We're just coming to talk to you, Miss Smith." But and they know they got evidence on you because you don't know that they have evidence on you. Of course, it's gonna go cool and calm and smooth. But if they told you on the phone, we got some information that you were there, and we got an eyewitness that say you were there. We coming over there to talk to you, to ask you some more questions. You're gonna be like, "Okay, come on." And you're not going to answer the door. You're going to be gone. But if you don't know that, those are detectives. But as you can see, when you see TAC units geared up, they are the ones going in there to arrest and detain the suspect. And they're in the same way because most of the time when you're dealing with suspects of that nature, a lot of them don't want to go willingly.
No.
Well, some of them say, I'm not going back at all. So you have to be prepared for that. So detectives are investigating and they look clean with it too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my cousin was a detective. I got friends that are, and they look nice and clean and they're investigating it, but it's a different ball game when you have to go out there and it's possible that you're going to have to put hands on someone and arrest someone, detain someone, tase someone, handcuff someone, things of that nature. That makes a difference.
Now, look, I feel like I'm like people do me as a lawyer, right? Inciting law and order and stuff like that. And that's essentially what I'm doing right now. But like, but the people on law and order, they have the belt, they have the weapons. They have the
TV,
weapons on.
TV,
Okay.
TV for one. Now, officers, they might still have their weapon,
Yeah.
and you might see some detectives that might have their handcuffs, but that's it. You won't see any with a taser, or you won't see any with a pepper spray, or you won't see any with a nightstick, you know, with a baton. They don't have those, you know. Very, very, very few do, because if a situation comes to that, the only thing they have is their gun.
Right.
They're gonna take it out, you pull, you know, aim it, pull it, or they're gonna take it out. That's it. They don't have no other means to de-escalate the situation because they didn't expect that for one, and they're not in full uniform for that. And again, like I said, that's TV. And in reality, if a detective is going to apprehend or to question a murder suspect or a serious suspect, they're going to call for a unit in uniform to come by and back them up.
I see.
They're going to definitely do that part.
So with the need to be in full uniform, including, you know, this de-escalation tools, equipment, what is one moment in your career that confirmed that compassion, you mentioned patience, and or whether compassion is even an element to this, but that compassion can save a life because you do have the badge, you have the oath of protecting and serving, and you do have the equipment that could end a life. But how, if at all, did you learn in your career, or when did you learn in your career that compassion could save a life?
Well, I would say my first time I saw suicide. You know, at that time it was definitely too late, but having to talk to the family members and talk to the friends of the young man that decided he took his life because his broke up with his girlfriend, little young kid, you know, and being able to go back and assess other situations as they came up when we got suicide calls or possible suicide or suicide in progress, and to be able to go there and talk to that person and use as much experience and training that we had and common sense and compassion with that person to try to get them to get off the edge, you know, or put the knife down, you know, or not take those pills and things of that nature. But just the actual idea of that you do have life after this, you know. And I remember a young kid. He was I didn't keep in touch with him, of course, as my career went on, but his mom called and did a welfare check on him. And she gave us, the door was locked. She gave us permission to kick the door down to go in the house to find her son. True enough, me and my partner went in, kicked the door down, searched the whole house, found her son in his closet with the belt tied around his neck, trying to commit suicide. Of course, you know, caught him, stopped him, picked him up, took him down, and he regained consciousness and everything. He called the paramedics, took him to the doctor, took him to the NPC unit. You know, his mom came and everything, and I continued to check on him after that. After he got released from the hospital and from facilities, and he came back home and everything, I wanted to make it my job and my duty to check on him, to you know, have conversations with him and make sure everything was still going right with him, just so he couldn't be in that situation again. And I even gave him a phone number. You know, that didn't happen at times. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I told him and his mom, if you ever need anything, you know, to give me a call. If he got down and out, to give me a call. And he did a few times, and we talked, and it boosted him up. But in years going after that, when I called and checked on him, mom gave 2 thumbs up and said he was doing great. He's graduating high school. He's getting ready to go to college. So that helped. And those are the stories that we like to hear and be a part of as officers, even if it's not, you know, necessarily the stories you see on the news or in the media when officers have done a great job of stopping someone from jumping off a building, you know, things of that nature. But, you know, to be able to communicate and keep that bond with someone that actually try to take their life, even at a young age, and to help them and prevent him from doing that in the future, it was definitely a positive thing that I really enjoyed in my career.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Because I don't think a lot of people realize the very traumatic things that law enforcement officers, LEOs, witness and experience. Post-traumatic stress disorder is very real with first responders, you know, and the last time I researched it, I hope it's been changed. I know that there were people advocating for a change, but with workers' comp, that mental health conditions for first responders was not something that was covered for workers' comp, but they needed time off for that. And with all of that being said, you know, and you know, witnessing someone who is in the process of dying by suicide, it is their intent to do so, or finding you know, the young man already deceased. How or what resources are officers, what resources do they have available to them to help to process these types of things that they may witness and be a part of in helping, or even having to discharge their gun? That's something that can be very impactful on someone as well. How do they deal with it? How did you deal with it?
Well, and in my career, you know, 30, even though, you know, like I said, 31 years and majority of it was in the community service, I still was in pretty much in uniform per se, and I still haven't had my weapon with me every day, no matter what. Even when I'm interacting with the youth, you know, in that community capacity, I still had it with me because, you know, like I know today's time society, anything can happen anytime. And as a police officer, why not be prepared when I should be prepared? You know, but our department has I know her name, but I can't think of her actual title. I want to say she was Dr. Verdi. She was our, at the time before she retired, she was our psychiatrist that we went and talked to when you had those kind of situations that happen. And anytime you discharge your firearm and shot someone, you had to go see psych services. That's what it was. You had to go to psych services. You had to take 3 days off no matter what. Now, for discharging it, no, but when someone was injured with it, you had to go to psych services, and you had mandatory. You had to take 3 days off, and in that time frame, of course, they check on you. You come there for visits. They question you. They come to your house and things of that nature before you get the all clear to come back to work. I never had to discharge my firearm. I was shot at once. I've had 2 situations in my career where I would have been justified in discharging it. I had a gun, but the guy put the gun down. The guy listened to me both times. I'm 6'3", 235. This guy was 6'5", 250, 260. And it's funny, he was tatted up, had swastikas all over his body. I'm like, oh Lord, he better listen to me, or it's gonna be the last time. But I had my weapon drawn on him. He put it down. He listened. He was so big, I had to use 2 pair of handcuffs.
Wow.
You know,
To like connect them so that they were long enough. Oh, goodness.
Behind his back because he was that big and swole. And I'm like, whoo! I say, buddy, after I handcuffed him, I say, I'm so glad you listened to everything I said.
Yeah.
But if he wouldn't have, then of course I would have had to I would have discharged a firearm. The other time, the guy was walking out of the store, walked right by me. The first time, I'm sitting in the car doing a report, just that quick. He lived in a rough area. he realized that his gun that he had on him, because he had the gun when he walked by. I didn't see it. It was under his shirt. He walked in, spoke to me, walked back out. The gun must start sliding down. So what did he have to do? He got to grab it and pick it back up. So he does all that, and I'm sitting in my car. I'm like, homeless guy in front of the store. Look at him. He look at me. Like, what you gonna do? So I got out of the car. I drew down on him, and by the time he rolled his head up with the gun in his hand, I say, stop. Just go down to your knees. Drop the bag. He did all of that. He listened. He went to the ground and handcuffed him. And of course, I actually helped that guy out because ran the gun. The gun was clean. He had some warrants, and I knew the area that he lived in. So I'm like, all right, let me see how I can help this dude out. I said, all right, I'm gonna take your gun come back clean. I'm gonna take your gun home and give it to your mama, and I'm just gonna take you to jail for these warrants. Oh no. I do not want to go home. Take me to jail right now. I said, oh, okay. So what did I do? I took him home to mama.
Yes.
A lot of stories.
Sometimes that could be worse.
I can tell you. I took him home to mama. Told mama what was going on. She said, Officer Webb, please, just take the handcuffs off of him and give me 5 minutes. Can you do that for me? I said, oh, yes, I surely can. Took the handcuffs off of him. Mama took him in that back room. And the hurricane and tornado and earthquake took effect. He came back out crying. You can handcuff me down, officer. Go down for his warrants and took him down.
Yeah.
A month later, I'm in Taco Bell getting me a little some tacos. Who's back there making my food?
He had a job. Yes.
He had a job. And he looked, I said, oh no, he can't make my food. And when he heard me say that, I knew the manager there. I frequented the place. When he heard me say that, he looked up and he come running out of the back of the restaurant. I'm thinking he's gonna come over there and start talking crap to me. Comes up to me, give me a hug.
Oh,
like, thank you, man. You just don't know how much that changed my life around. Yeah. And I made sure from that point again, I wasn't gonna see the police on that level again. And that was one of the good things about that I remember too, because that was a time where I could have gotten shot or I could have shot someone. Yeah. Both situations. But me per se, as far as handling stress and situation in my life, I've always been that kind of person to where I didn't bring it home. I didn't bring it home. And my wife and the family and friends, I shared stories, but I didn't bring it home. And we're human. There are times where work is going to affect you some kind of way to where it's going to affect your decision making at home sometimes. You're going to be a little edgy. You're going to be a little moody. Yeah, but I didn't do it to where it affected my personal life, family, or friends to where we had to take a break or we had to, we're not going to go talk to him. We're not going to see him. We're not going to ask him anything like that. But every officer is different. There are officers that I know that have had to resign and quit early. They couldn't take the job. They couldn't take the mental part of going to a call on an accident and seeing dead bodies. Yeah. On a homicide and seeing dead bodies. Going to a call where someone is just actually dead and their life is over with. And I've been to my share of them, but it was my job. And I knew that in seeing that and doing that, I had to do my job and I had to make sure after I'd done my job, I can go home and continue my life, wake up and do it again the next day. So I didn't let it affect me no matter how many dead bodies I saw and what other kind of situations I was in and what other kind of stress levels I was in. For me personally, I made sure that I didn't let that affect my personal life to where it caused any kind of issues on that side of it.
That's good stuff. That is very good. So you're retired now, 31 years of service. Congratulations again.
Yes.
We're not done. You're still very much involved in the community. How did you translate your service as a law enforcement officer into the community and what you're doing now?
The youth program that I was a part of is TAPS, Teens and Police Service. As part of my job title in the community here, when I retired, they asked me would I still want to be interested in coming on.
Okay.
I'm like, okay. Now that I'm retired, I'm like, okay, how much I'm getting paid? That's one right there, So being in the program since it started in 2011, and I was one of the first volunteers for that also to be a part of that. So when I retired, they asked me to come on to be a part of the team as one of the officers, and I did that. And going into middle schools and high schools and talking to the youth and the detention centers too, talking to the youth, male and female, sharing my stories with them and my experience with them, and sharing one of our main topics is what to do when stopped by a police officer. You get a lot of kids. Well, you can't do this, you can't do that. I was like, hold on, let's talk about it. Telling them what they can and can't do, and what an officer can and can't do. Also, not just one side, a two-sided coin. What everyone can and cannot do, so it can help save a life.
Yes.
But being able to go out and see the smile on these kids' face and going to the detention centers outside of the schools and being preventive, but the support that we get from the detention centers and the kids there, and hearing the stories when I talk to some of the officers there about how this kid has changed since our program came there, and how they said they weren't coming back and we haven't seen them back.
Oh,
There's been some that said they weren't coming back and they back.
Yeah.
Go back there 6 months later when they supposed to got out a month ago and they back. So overall, like a lot of mentors and officers say, if we can get one out of the bunch, that's cool. And we want as many as we can, but just to reach one and to stop them from, as that young teen age, from going into that system as an adult and being in that prison world is a positive thing. So being able to do that in retirement and just seeing the joy on their face when they see us and hear those stories, and the wide eyes when I tell these, me and my other partners, when we tell these real stories about death and about life and about imprisonment and about jail, it's a good feeling that I have and my other coworkers have too, because at least we know we did our part in trying to help them prevent that, and we'll see how things go, as they get older.
Well, that's great. Great service. It's so important to continue to talk to our youth, and just being able to address the recidivism rate for youth and adults, and for all the children out there, little boys and little girls who say they want to be a police officer when they grow up. I know my youngest son did a commercial for our local police department, and I remember him saying, he had the little police hat on. He was like, I want to help people. The police, they help people, and I want to help people too. I want to be a police officer. So what do you say to those children and young ladies and young men who want to pursue a career in law enforcement?
For the youngsters, like middle school and elementary, of course, we shoot them with the good grades, good report, don't get in any kind of trouble, don't get arrested, implement that part. Now for the high schoolers, it's a whole different ballgame. Now that you're in high school, go ahead and graduate. Like most departments, they require you to have a certain amount of college hours, turn 21, keep your background clean, and keep your credit clean. But also, when we tell these stories, these are real, true life stories that we're not sugarcoating anything. That's one thing I specify when I give my presentations. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. And if y'all cool with that, let me know. I'm coming on in there. There's sometimes when I use profanity to get one across, and some of them need it.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're in right now. But we just stress to them the importance of those do things at this level. And once you get to that point and you of age and you're taking care of your business at this point, and it's something that you really want to do, then you can apply. And I also let them know about the ride along program, which most departments do, to where you can go ride with an officer during this shift and get that experience. And if that's something that you really want to do, now you know. And if it's something that's too much for you, now you know. Those are the ways that we speak to them and give them as much information as we can for those that might want to do it.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in to Mental Wealth Wednesday. We had the honor of having retired officer Charles Webb join us, 31 years of service. He's repping all the things, Texas Southern on his jacket. Houston Police Department, excellent service. Thank you so much for sharing with us today and helping families like mine know about crisis intervention and how we might be able to work with our local law enforcement officers. And as usual, know that you can download resources at CoreyEmpowers.com. For mental health resources, we share some resources here today. Check with your local police department and other local mental health organizations to know about the resources to help you and your family to be safe and to work with other organizations and other families who may not know what to do. So thank you again, Mr. Webb. I truly appreciate your time. Happy Black History Month.
Yes, my pleasure. Have a good one.
Thank you.